have with us Dr. Ricky Gallaway with a session on how business leadership can advance Goal 10 on reduced inequalities. Dr. Ricky Gallaway is the CEO of Transcontinental Consulting LLC. He is an international business strategist and leadership coach who forged a path in corporate America. A certified coach, speaker, and trainer, Dr. Gallaway coaches business owners and corporate leaders, both domestic and international, to transform organizations by empowering their personnel to meet its mission by maximizing their knowledge of the 5 critical success factors of business development, that is, to enhance the clarity of self and others, identify new response techniques, leverage their strength, develop productive relationships, and achieve desired goals. He has been instrumental in transforming work environments within the private, public, government, and non-profit sectors. Thank you so much, Dr. Ricky, for joining us today. Over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Once again, good evening, and I'm happy to be a part of this opportunity to speak to everyone here today. As we talk about reducing inequalities and increasing equity, specifically, Dr. Malik had mentioned two cases that's prevalent in the news media of today, which was George Floyd as well as the pandemic. And the systematic racism and systematic inequalities within the legal system was prevalent in the revelation of the George Floyd case. And the pandemic because so many people was home and away from work, gave you the opportunity to see it firsthand and bring a light to that. And that was instrumental in what became the conviction of Derek Chauvin. Racism as well as inequality in the workplace is not something new, unfortunately. It is very prevalent, and we as a nation has to realize that we face various entities of injustice. And this particular slide I found that was very instrumental in that we talked about the top 1% of the business world, which was the reality of the situation. And we have more than one, that 1% have absolute more than what's necessary to, and from a financial perspective. But when we look at equality brings us to the point where we get to more a level playing field. And each person is still getting their own. But even in equality, we'll recognize in that second picture that even though the platform and the base is equal, because of the individual situations and individuality that we face as people, we still are not able to clearly see. Equity will provide us all the support that we need, and that's from the leadership perspective that we provide that support, which will now give us, everybody gets to see the same picture. But when true justice is put into place, we recognize we remove the barrier altogether. And that's where I think the SMEs comes into play. Because if we look at from statistics from the World Bank, SMEs contribute to more than 50% of the global GDP. And in some instances, it's even up to as much as 70%. However, and they contribute to more than 50% of the world's employees. So when we look at where we stand, SMEs are very instrumental in the governance of equity and equality. However, what seems to lack is understanding the circle of your importance and where you fit in. And the first thing we always have to adjust is leadership. And where does leadership come in? I'm a member of following John Maxwell. He said everything rises and falls upon leadership. So we have to understand that you have to put leaders in place, and those who are in place have to recognize their importance and their role in setting the example and establishing the environment for do so. Then what we talk about is we also have to look at our vendor partners and what is our role in addressing our different vendor partners. And I will get into that in more detail. Next, we have to look at our peers. Those are the individuals that is working directly with us and how we address them and ask them to address us. Finally, we have our stakeholders. When we bring that, if we notice, I purposely use that background of the world because the the way we are working today, everything is a global environment. So there is no more just the United States or just Asia or just Europe or just Africa. It's all of us working together, and that's where we'll truly achieve it, real equity in the global marketplace. So as we talk about leadership, we have to be mindful that leaders must be mindful that the opportunities provided to one must be able to be met and be provided to all across the board. Now, does that mean that obviously if I promote one person, I can't promote everybody? But when we set the opportunity and put the opportunity in place, we must be mindful that what we do as leaders sets the stage for not only our organization, but in many cases become templates for other organizations. So we have to stop think working of ourselves. Previous speakers said one of the things we can do is alleviate the phrase SME altogether. And I know in essence, I do agree with that because when you start your business, even though you start your business, if we take one of the largest businesses globally today, which is Amazon, was started in a garage. He had a vision of how big his business is going to be. Despite starting in a small space, he still thought big. And that's where I think that's where we have to be mindful, is understanding that it's not the size of your business, but the value your business is going to bring. Okay. Then we talk about I previously mentioned the opportunities that we have to provide that we provide ourselves, we provide others, because we cannot always just rely on something being given to us. We have to create our own opportunities, and those opportunities that we create, we then build on them for others. And of course, we look at the tools that we bring in. Tools. The most important tool that you bring to the table is your intellectual capital, and that is one of the things that we must not only um, protect, but we must be willing to share. The sharing of the intellectual capital will bring more and more realistics and more realization to the problems. And because we share that and we have more people together, we then bring together more opportunities for solutions. Where does peers fit in all of this? So peers, we mentioned with Dr. I think with Dr. Malik who mentioned also had mentioned peers and how we must see if we see something, we must work with each other, speak up on it. And I think when you're talking about your peers are the biggest advocates within an organization. Okay, when you have an organization of people who truly respect each other. You don't have to like each other, but you do have to respect each other. Respect each other's culture, respect each other's differences, respect each other's religion, respect each other's gender origin, regardless whether you agree with it or not. The level of respect that you provide and the level of respect that you get will make you the ideal advocate for those who work with you. Okay. Then we talk about our vendor partners. And when we think about our vendor partners, we're talking about fair and equitable negotiations. You go into a negotiation, you don't go into a negotiation to rate the person over the coals or get the most. You go into the negotiation with fair and equitable um, dollar amounts or services or products or what have you, whatever you are looking to share, was you look to provide, not only making sure that you get the absolute most, but make sure the other person get the absolute, that get the most that he or she can also get at that table. Your table is but so big, but when it's all said and done, if 50% of the table was shared by one individual and the other 50% by the other, or what have you, but a fair and equitable percentage for each member sitting at the table, everyone walks away smiling and everyone walks away understanding that he or she contributed something and made something better for the other person. We must also minimize privilege negotiation. What does privilege negotiation mean? It is when you consistently see the same individuals getting the breaks, that despite the effort and the work of other people and other organizations, they're still consistently being left out because of that ideal privileged few. As we address that privilege negotiation and minimize privilege negotiation, we will start to see the increase of productivity of all across the board. Okay, that's where our stakeholders come in. Stakeholders are things in today's economy, the two most important stakeholders are the financial industry and the medical industry. The financial industry must must take the role of we are backing business development, not individuals. And as you take the role of backing business development and seeing products and services that can be moved across the board to help everyone and to help various industries, and how those industries will be better supportive of a global economy. We must look to find stakeholders in the finance industry um, who, because of their situation, they are able to provide that level of guidance and support and investment in the industries, and stop looking to just invest in the individual because of, again, that privileged negotiation that I meant. The medical industry has become very evident in the news media today because of COVID-19, and we have seen that there is not a fair and equitable distribution of the the various vaccines, or who's getting the vaccines, even within the country. It's not even a country level, because in some countries, i.e. the United States, you're still seeing that there's a disparity in who is getting the vaccine, how many doses that they're getting. There's a disparity globally in other countries not even getting sufficient amount of vaccines despite how much they have requested. So when it's all said and done, we must consistently look for fair and equitable, because once we have fair and equitable, we will have access, and that access is what small and minority and excuse me small and medium-sized businesses um, bring to the table. As I stated before, we small and medium-sized enterprises provide over 50% and up to maybe 70% of the global GDP. If you look at so when we look at this final slide, we look at the final slide, and you see two individuals about to run the same race, have the same distance, but as you can see, one individual, i.e., one company, may have very little to no obstacles whatsoever. The other company, in this case, we're using just two particular individuals, a lady and a male and a female. You notice the female has shackles on her legs, despite she's dressed more for the event at hand. She's shackled. She has multiple obstacles in front of her. And the quote, quit whining, is the same distance. And true, it's the same distance. But what are the obstacles in front of one that's not in front of the other? Okay. We need to we need to systematically remove these obstacles so that businesses on all level can compete despite the despite the size of your business. It has to be your ability to perform. I like to tell people, if big businesses, i.e., that 1% is the light, then small businesses and medium-sized enterprises is the electricity that provides this current so that light can shine. In other words, without the small and medium-sized enterprises, big businesses will never survive, because we are the foundation to them. When you know your power and you know your position, is at that point you can speak at the table. And I thank you for this opportunity to speak. I know we had a little very short time, and I wanted to be very conscious of the time and hit the highlights and the more major points. I think it's very systematically across the board. We must first recognize our place, then recognize our value, because until you recognize your true place at the table, I often tell my clients, um, in every conference room, there's a table in the middle of the room, and there's a certain amount of chairs at the table. And then most conference rooms, you'll see chairs against the wall. The people at the table make the decision. And then once the decision is made, they usually end with this: do anyone have any questions? In other words, you can speak your piece, but the decision has already been made. It is important that those CEOs of small and medium sized enterprises, when they walk into a room, stop sitting at the chairs against the wall and immediately walk to the table and have your seat, because it's at that point in time you will have your say. And once you have your say, you can make a difference in the level of inequality that's reduced, the level of equity that is increased, and overall the justice that is presented because you have a voice in removing the barriers that is in front of your organization. And when you move the barriers that's in front of your organization, you inadvertently remove the barriers in front of other organizations as well. I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to being a part of this panel in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ricky. Oh, that was amazing, really inspiring. As you said, let us all decide to sit at the table and be decision makers. Thank you for joining us today and inspiring us.
Thank you.
Thank you.